Good evening and welcome to this November 10th, 2020 Committee of the Board meeting. The time is now 4:31 p.m. We will begin with a roll call conducted by our Board Secretary, Ms. Sarah Dalkey.
Director Ellis.
Here.
Director Foster.
Here.
Director Broderick.
Here.
Director Vu. Director Allen.
Here.
Director Kopp.
Here.
And Director Marchese.
I'd also like to acknowledge members of administration as well. Please respond when your name is called.
Superintendent Gothard.
Here, Sarah. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. Chris Long, General Counsel.
Here.
Cedric Baker, Chief of Staff.
Here.
Marie Jewell, Chief Financial Officer.
Here.
Jackie Turner, Chief Operations Officer.
Here.
Dave Watkins, Chief of Schools.
Here.
Kate Wilcox Harris, Chief Academic Officer.
Here.
Stacy Gray Achea, Director, Research, Evaluation, and Assessment.
Here.
Kenyatta McCarty, Executive Director, Human Resources.
Here.
Kevin Burns, Director, Office of Communications.
Here.
Khalid Ali, Seed Member. Oh, Seed Member Ali, you may be on mute.
Here.
Oh, great, thanks. Kain Tao, Board Administrator.
Here.
And I'm Sarah Dalkey, Board Secretary. And it looks like we do have Director Marchese.
Great, and we'll acknowledge Director Vu as he comes on. I'd also like to congratulate Director Jim Vu in the election to the Board of Education. I don't know, I'm looking to see if he's signed on yet.
Chair Foster, I just received a text message and he is trying to join right now.
Okay, we'll give it a second here. It's going to take a moment. I'd just like to acknowledge we've just gone through an election. There we go. Welcome, Director Vu. I'd also like to congratulate Director Jim Vu on his election to the Board of Education. He will begin immediately following the canvassing of the election results on November 3rd of the November 3rd general election on November 12th or on November 13th. And we look forward to continuing our work together with you, Director Vu. Next, I'd like to move the approval of the agenda, which includes the superintendent's announcements, a SEEB update, reopen SPPS update, fiscal year 2019-2020 final budget revisions, and a report out of the Council of Great City Schools annual fall conference. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. That motion was seconded by Director Broderick. Vote, please.
Director Ellis.
Yes.
Director Foster.
Yes.
Director Broderick.
Yes.
Director Vu. Director Allen.
Yes.
Director Kopp.
Yes.
And Director Marchese.
Yes.
Next, we'll move on to the superintendent's report, and I will turn that over to you, Superintendent Gothard.
Good evening, Chair Foster, members of the board, staff, community. Thank you. I too would like to congratulate Director Vu for his successful election night win this past Tuesday. I think 3 candidates, over 20,000 votes on a presidential election. Great turnout, obviously, but also thank you to all those who ran for office as well. I can imagine that this is probably unlike no other campaign folks have run. in this time of COVID-19. And again, congratulations to Director Vu and all those who were successful on Tuesday night or soon thereafter, the way that things are going. Would also like to acknowledge the great work happening in our district. So many have really put themselves into positions of collaborating with groups around the district as we successfully transitioned stage 1 schools into hybrid learning. That is no small feat at all. We're about 3 weeks in right now, and as you know, we'll share with you some additional plans that we're going to take tonight throughout the meeting. But it is important for me to just share how incredibly proud I am of the so many people who are coming forward to plan to do things safely, to do it effectively, and to most importantly, follow our plan. We have shared with you from day one exactly what our plan is, what we intend to do. We have been open and transparent with decisions that we're making. And I think what you're seeing is you have a team, members of the board, who is really working well together right now. And that doesn't mean we always agree, but the manner in which we've come together, especially in these times, to make decisions that are truly based on what you expect from me, what you expect from this district, and what we want to provide our students, our staff, and our community. I'm just really proud. So you'll learn some tonight, and we're also talking at a time where COVID cases, both here in St. Paul, Ramsey County, the state of Minnesota, the United States, and across the world, are at a pace that we've never seen at any point of this pandemic, and it's alarming. We have a lot of work to do yet, and yet here we are working together with St. Paul, Ramsey County to partner in this work. And I just want to say to the community once again, I've never felt alone in this work. There are always people who are there to share their feedback, their perspectives with me, but more importantly, those who are willing to lean in to help us make decisions, to educate us, to work together, to answer questions we have, and to truly extend their knowledge, their resources, and their expertise to help us make the best decisions. So tonight's meeting in many ways is what I get to do every day. It's sharing with you the many ways that St. Paul Public Schools works together to deliver in these really uncertain times that are unprecedented for the work that we've all signed up to do. Though it's becoming far too normal. Governor Walz, I was not able to hear his comments today. I hope to probably later tonight. But I, again, heard him illustrate the point that there will be another side to this. I think we had all hoped that other side would have started much sooner. We don't know if we're quite halfway there or where we are exactly. But I think that focus that Minnesotans and St. Paulites alike will come together to get to that other side. We've got a lot of work to do. There's no doubt about that. The purpose of tonight's conversations are for you to hear our planning, to allow you to hear from some of our partners, and to hear some of the questions and feedback that you might have that we can address in the best way possible. So with that, Chair Foster, I will keep my comments very brief tonight. We've got a lot of information to share with you. We've got some partners who have joined us, as I said, from St. Paul Ramsey County, and I will yield the floor back to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, I remembered the mute. With that, I will open the floor up to any board members for questions and comments, beginning with Director Ellis.
I don't have any questions or comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Broderick.
No, I had a very, very good conversation with Dr. Gothard yesterday morning, and I'm feeling, I was going to use the word feeling confident, but I'm not afraid to use that word. I'm feeling confident that we're moving along in a deliberate manner. And I think at this point in time, that's all we can expect to do. I'll just pass it on.
Thank you. Director Vu.
I don't have any comments at this moment.
Thank you. Director Allen.
No, I don't have any comments.
Director Cox.
No questions or comments at the moment. Thank you.
Director Marchese.
I just want to thank the superintendent and the team for really, I think, working very hard under really tough circumstances. I don't think people realize the amount of planning and effort that's going in to the process. And I really appreciate that this has really been a hard slog. It's an endurance race. And I know that that's been something that you've been committed to doing, superintendent and your team. So it's noted and it's recognized, and we're getting comments from community members who are seeing that as well. And I think that should be known.
SEEB member Ali.
No question, but just a comment. I think Superintendent Gothard and your team, I think you guys have been working, tirelessly. This is not a straightaway marathon. This is uphill marathon, and you guys are, working on and doing what you can to, help us in the community and the district. And yeah, hopefully we get through this together and we can hopefully overcome it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just echo that of SEEB member Ali and Director Marchese and others. Just thank you all for your tireless work. We'll continue to do this. We know there's no perfect answer or solution, and that you guys are having to dig in every single day. So thank you to Dr. Gothard. Thank you to the team. Thank you to the community who is continuing to engage us in meaningful ways. It is necessary and appreciated. Superintendent Gothard, any closing remarks?
No, not at all. Look forward to learning and sharing with all of you tonight. So let's proceed. Thank you, Chair Foster.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the SEEB update, and I will turn it over to SEEB member Ali.
Superintendent Gothard, Chair Foster. Today I have a couple update on SEEB and what we have been working for the past couple of weeks. We've been working with Kurt and Becky on our restorative processes to build a better community and have fun and review our SEEB update, and also, discuss our role as SEEB. Over the past couple of weeks, we have been working with Kurt and Becky to build a better SEEB community and have fun while doing it. It has been really important for us to establish a strong SEEB in the eyes of the board and also the district as a community, as community sees us, and our work has, been live for the past couple months, but we're trying to get better and help the community and the district as well. We've been working to update our SEEB manual with, every SEEB member contributing their own ideas and making sure that it is transparent and it serves better and for a long time. We have also we are hopeful that we can discuss those changes with the superintendent and board members in coming weeks. This will help establish a better relationship for years to come. Our SEEB job description update. We have been discussing our role as SEEB and the influence it has on decision making and the district-wide, and the influence it has in the community. We're hopeful that we can have a better informed role in the district regarding students and district as a whole. Our future goals are to interview new and hire new SEEB members, and also to interview and hire new SEEB mentor / facilitator, and also recruit new SEEB members. Over the past couple of weeks, a couple of SEEB members have been working individually to on census count and also voter registration, as it is important for our community to have been counted and also register new voters to vote in the past election. And that will end my SEEB update for today. And I'm open to any questions that board members have or Superintendent Gothard. Thank you.
Thank you, SEEB member Ali. I will begin questions or comments, starting with Director Ellis.
SEEB member Ali, can you tell me about how many registered voters do you think you guys connected with?
Individually, I had 157 voter registered in my community alone, and other SEEB members have been working on by themselves. So I can't quite give you exact number, but we have been working tirelessly to get new voters.
That's amazing. And then about how many people do you think that you've had a contact with in regards to the census?
The census count, it was been a challenging one, especially I started during when the outbreak started and people were, hesitant on their response. But I have contacted a couple families, not couple, but some families that, word of mouth, and they contacted different families. So going along, mainly did my counting and helping the Oromo community get counted at the mosque and the community Oromo Community Center, which helped. I believe from March till the end of July, we had about 2,500 family, not individuals, families, to make sure that they were counted. Check that they were counted. So we did a lot, but not hopefully enough to keep our congressional seat.
Thank you for your work. That's really very impressive. I did not know that was the work that SEEB was doing. So thank you for sharing. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Broderick.
No questions tonight. Thank you very much for a good report.
Thank you, Director Vu.
Sorry for the delay. I do have a question for SEEB Member Ali. SEEB Member Ali, can you say more about the role of mentors for SEEB and how they help support your members and how they help bridge the SEEB group as well as the SEEB group with the district? I just want to know a little bit more about that.
Actually, on regards to that, we haven't had a mentor or SEEB facilitator for a while now. Our last SEEB facilitator was contract was terminated or before coronavirus, so we haven't had one. But we have been working with Becky and Kurt to establish how the new role of the new facilitator will have and what we hope to accomplish from that. Usually, the role of facilitator is a bridge between us and the board members to bring us together and discuss matters that both us SEEB and also board members have need to discuss in regards to students or the district. So we haven't had one, but we are working on to get one in the coming weeks, if not soon.
Just a little bit more. Ideally, what kind of characteristics or qualities would you seek in a mentor? This type of role.
I think someone who knows the district and also someone who understands that what the students need as well as what the board or the district can provide for the students. If that person can be the bridge between us and help us understand better and also have some influence on the decision making of the board.
All right, thank you for sharing that. That's all I had.
Thank you. Director Allen?
Thank you so much for the work that you do, Khalid. I think it's amazing, and the whole SEEB team. I'm wondering, you talked about you want to do some recruitment right now, right? And I know it's real difficult because of the way that we're situated in distance learning. Can't just go in the lunchroom and give your informational speech like you typically would. Is there any way that the district or the board can help support in that? Maybe sitting down, coming up with some ideas about how we can come up with some cool videos that might grab the attention of some of the youth. Doing some TikTok, TikTok's always cool with y'all. Just to try to grab the attention of the youth, to try to do some recruitment. Is there anything that we can do to help?
I think, that could be the start. That's definitely important that, students do care that if they know that, board members and district-wide office, they care about the students and they want their input in the decision-making. And I think more students will be interested in applying. But yeah, I think that could be the start. We hopefully we can work with you guys to establish that, and we can have some new board members soon.
Cool. Reach out to me so we can kind of put something together. I'll do a TikTok.
Thank you. Director Allen, is that all?
Yep, that's it. Just reach out. Let me know, man.
Thank you. Director Cox.
I will also embarrassingly sign myself up for a TikTok. I think we should do that together. I think that would be wonderful, possibly frightening. But I just wanted to say thank you, C. Member Ali, for all the work you do coming to these meetings, reporting back to us, being that link. I really appreciate that. And I'm excited to see the work you're doing on the SEEB manual as a group and where that's going. I know it's been a difficult year, and I'm really excited about it being better. And I appreciate, I know a lot of you are seniors and thinking that you're thinking about who comes after you and wanting it to be good for them, I think that's wonderful and inspiring. And I also want to give a shout out to Becky and Kurt, who have been doing incredible work to build some bridges, heal some wounds, and take us forward. And I'm really excited about where this goes next. And I look forward to the opportunity to publicly embarrass myself with a TikTok. Is it a video? Is it a dance? I don't even know. Someone will have to help me out with the tech. But I'm in. Because I want to see broader, enthusiastic representation, and they can join the good work that's in progress and that is to come.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Marchese.
Yeah, I'm not going to speak too long because my colleagues said most of what I wanted to say about my appreciation for your work, SEEB Member Ali, for all of the work of the other SEEB members. Several of us on this board have been, in conversation and in community with you and your colleagues about how to try to get this moving in a good direction in some new ways, and I'm really excited. I'll even do a TikTok video too, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. But I think it's important to really think about how we can tailor what we're doing to reach students in ways that and your colleagues know are going to be effective, and that voice is amplified here in this space and in the spaces around the district. So thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing more and being involved. And Becky and Kurt have done wonderful work. I've been again in Restorative Circle with them, and they're talented people.
Thank you. SEEB Member Ali, I'd start first for just saying thank you. Thank you to you, to the other SEEB members, and to Becky and Kurt and Kaying for keeping it moving with the board. To think about the level of work. This is one of the things I always appreciate because many folks don't understand what SEEB is. We're still trying to understand what that is and what it needs to look like through the lenses of each of you. But the time that you take, this isn't just some honorary space. This is real. This is tangible. You guys have been creating and affecting change for students across this district, and your commitment, as you have shown, by showing up, by engaging others, the work in school and out of school is just so deeply appreciated. But I want other folks that may be looking at this, that represent other districts, to understand that student voice is not just a silo. It is really about an ebb and flow of what we do. And so I look forward to, as we are refining what that means for us, to having authentic engagement and working with you all. And I hear support coming out of this board for that work. So please continue to push us and dial in and tap in. And I too will do a TikTok. I don't mind looking silly. I just need to know what I'm looking silly for. And then I have one question. Currently, of the membership, how many SEEB members are there currently? I know we lost 4 last year to graduation. How many are current, and what is the capacity?
I believe as of right now, we have 7, if I am not wrong. But our highest number was 13 last year. So I think it's especially important that we recruit, fast and quick, especially as all of our members are seniors, and they will be going away next year. And they won't have any contact with district. And so it's better for us to start now so we can have individuals that know for next year.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Superintendent Gothard, would you like to provide any closing remarks?
Steve Member Ali, just want to thank you. You know, it's I'll just be honest with you. There aren't often a ton of bright spots in our days right now. It's been really hard, and hearing you speak with such energy tonight, you know, just lifted me. I have to be honest with you. So thank you. And also just say that, you know, leadership is one thing, and, you know, the role that you sit in can clearly be defined as leadership, but leadership is a whole nother level when things are as hard as they are, and yet you continue to raise your hand and show up and think about your community. It really says a lot about you as an individual, and I commend you and just thank you. Really, really proud of you. So thank you for all you do and you know, what you want to create for SEEB and St. Paul Public Schools.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is the Reopen SPPS plan update, and I will turn it back over to you, Superintendent Gothard.
All right, thank you, Chair Foster, members of the board and staff and community. You know the routine. We've got a few more chapters to bring your way tonight to share with you where we're at with our reopening plan. And as you know, we have guests that are joining us as well. The purpose of tonight, again, is in following our guiding principles, but also to educate each other about where we're at, where we want to go, and how we plan to get there. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chief of Schools, Dave Watkins, and we'll get started with tonight's presentation.
Thank you, Superintendent Gothard, Chair Foster, members of the board, SEEB Member Ali. Thank you for having us here for the reopening update for SPPS. Today we have, Sarah, if you could bring up the slides, we have 4 areas that we'll be sharing with you. We have the Ramsey County collaboration. We have our dial back in temporary shifts, and we also have student supports, EDL and credit recovery. And finally, we have hybrid stage 2 and 3 update. Our format today will be a little bit different. As you become familiar, we do parking lots for questions. We'll actually have 2 parking lots today. We'll have one right after item number 1, the Ramsey County collaboration. And then we'll have another parking lot after items 2, 3, and 4. Our guiding principles on the next slide remain the same. Last time we focused more on the fiscal responsibility. Today we'll be focusing more on the top 2, the focus on the needs of our students and family and prioritizing community well-being. Slide 4 is just a reminder of our hybrid stages. As we all know, we are currently in stage 1, looking for a stage 2, stage 3 transition coming in January. So first, we will be bringing up our guest from Ramsey County Collaboration update. And to introduce our guests, I'll bring Director of Health and Wellness, Mary Langworthy, to the screen, and she will kick off portion number 1. Mary?
Perfect. Thank you, Chief Watkins. Chair Foster, members of the board, Superintendent Gothard, and SEEB Member Ali, thank you for having us here this evening. I'm Mary Langworthy, Director of Health and Wellness. I'm here to share some perspectives from Ramsey County in partnership with some really key people that we've been able to work closely and collaborate with over the last few months in particular. We rely on, value, and learn from our partnerships. Those additional perspectives really help poke holes in our planning and make our efforts better. To that point, during this pandemic, we've been able to lean into a lot of key partnerships from the Minnesota Department of Health, the Minnesota Department of Education, and St. Paul Ramsey County. And today we have with us members from Ramsey County here to share a little bit more perspective at the county level, the city level, to share a little bit more about our ongoing conversations that we've had with them. We have sought their advice, their support, their feedback in a number of key areas around our indicators for opening up our schools, our indicators or reasons for looking at dialing back as a district, as well as reasons why we might temporarily shift a particular site or school for what's occurring at that particular location, number of case counts, any outbreak, any particular issues happening at a site. So I really value those key partnerships and conversations and appreciate all of their support and time that they've committed to St. Paul Public Schools. They've been very available, very helpful in this process. Again, nice to have those additional perspectives so that we're making really good critical decisions during this time. So I just want to introduce Dr. Lynn Ogawa, Medical Director of the School Support Branch Liaison, William Moore, Health Educator 2 for School Support Branch Liaison, and then Dana Janajewicz, Public Health Nurse and School Support Branch Director. I'm going to pass it over to them, and they are going to present some great information for you tonight regarding Ramsey County. I believe Dr. Ogawa. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mary. I'll get us started. And thank you and Dr. Gothard for your invitation to present to the board this evening. Madam Chair, members of the board, as Mary said, my name's Dana Janajewicz. I'm a public health nurse with Ramsey County, and I'm the director of our school support branch within our Public Health Incident Command. And so our branch's job is to share the public health perspective of the COVID-19 pandemic with school districts in Ramsey County so that they have the information that they need to make the decisions about their schools. And our school support branch has been regularly engaged in consultation with St. Paul Public Schools regarding COVID-19 in Ramsey County. And so we are grateful for this partnership as well. And I believe schools and public health are kindred disciplines of some kind. So thank you for the time this evening. On this first slide, I'd like to begin just by bringing your attention to the data that we use when we consult with schools. The first link there listed is to the state situation update. On Thursdays each week, there's a list of school buildings with 5 or more confirmed cases of COVID-19 in students or staff who were in the building while infectious during a 2-week reporting period. And so if you scroll almost all the way to the bottom, you'll find that list of schools. And in the school settings, it can be hard to know if a cluster of cases among staff and students is occurring due to people getting the virus within the school or if it's coming, from the broader community. And so because of this, the Minnesota Department of Health set a benchmark of 5 to indicate likely transmission in the school. So yes, it's all the way at the bottom. And it'll say facilities with, just a little bit higher, there we go. Facilities with cases and exposures, that first link there, cases in pre-K through grade 12. Again, so it's listed by county and then the school buildings are listed there and that's updated on Thursdays. If we go back to the slides. So the following links listed on the slides come from our Ramsey County COVID-19 dashboard. And so this is information that our planners work hard to put together from data shared by the Minnesota Department of Health. And it is updated daily. And on the dashboard, you'll find a lot of information, daily case counts, weekly case rates, information about how much testing is being done in Ramsey County, and then also demographic information, which is illustrating how COVID-19 is impacting communities differently. So that's the situation update listed there. And we've also provided some of these links to the demographic, direct links to the demographic information in the slides for you to refer to, but it's all on this webpage. And the dashboard also links to St. Paul specific data as well. So, our purview is Ramsey County, but we have pulled some of that information specific to St. Paul as well, which you can find. So at this time, I'll turn it over to our medical director, Dr. Lynn Ogawa, to discuss what we are observing in Ramsey County.
When MDH made the initial recommendations about schools and how they should plan for opening and phased opening approaches, they talked at length, and they recommended looking at the 14-day rolling case rates. We usually get those by county, but we at St. Paul Ramsey County also recognize that the superintendents of school districts really also wanted to be able to see their individual city rates. You know, various school districts may serve multiple cities or areas and even multiple counties. St. Paul is nicely contained in some ways, and primarily the St. Paul city rate it reflects the schools and the population that you're pulling from. As you can see, the 14-day rolling case rates have been rising. And one of the important pieces about this data is that it is lagging data. So when we look at even the dates that it's identified, so you'll see the last column is October 18th to October 31st. We have to get all of the data in terms of the positives, look at the information associated with the cases, the number of total cases run, and then calculate their case rates. And so but we've been seeing dramatic rising rates within St. Paul. When you go back to before Labor Day, we were seeing on the order of 10 to 15. And then approximately 2 weeks later, we began to see the rise into the 20s. And now we are clearly, St. Paul is into the high 30s. I mentioned that this is already lagging. It also, because the way COVID is transmitted, we're talking about a 2-week lag even before we begin to see the rising rates. And so, and now we especially, we are seeing the individual day case rates rise in exponential ways. And so we do not expect these case rates to even flatten anytime soon, and we expect that they will be continuing to rise rapidly. I am not the good news bearer these days, and I'm getting very used to that. But our numbers are definitely rising. We also know within Ramsey County, we've been doing large mass testing above and longer than even the state has been doing, but we're getting data back from those sites. Our own sites, which have run at Aldrich and at Washington Tech, initially in September, October, we're running about a 5% positivity rate. And now those rates are definitely well into the teens. 16 and 18 are our most recent rates that we've been seeing. We're seeing community spread dramatic rises. We also, those sites were chosen specifically also to look at those communities, and we work with those communities that have been affected the greatest, including persons of color and things like that. So we know that those rates are rising even faster. Moving on to the, well, actually, one quick comment on this. One thing that I will say is that no city is alone right now, and no community is alone. And in fact, we are seeing the rates across Ramsey County, and just like Dr. Gothard mentioned, across the state and in rural areas rising at the same level. So this just unfortunately highlights all of the other negative things that I said earlier, which is that our trends definitely suggest that our case rates will continue to increase. We expect to see increases easily over the next 2 to 4 weeks. The governor today spoke about dialing back, and so we will be beginning to be, or we will see some changes in the next 1 to 2 weeks. We're hoping that these mitigation efforts will be able to slow spread. If we don't see that, then it's true. The state may need to dial back even more. It's similar as we've been working with St. Paul Public Schools, that you wanted decision-based decisions on the overall data, but then also recognizing that individual sites and unique situations are going to require specific decisions. We are absolutely continuing regular check-ins and discussions of situations. We've talked about contact tracing, individual exposures, families. Our job in Ramsey County is to also help support anyone who is positive, who has to quarantine or isolate. And so we've been working hard to make sure that we're accessible for those individuals. We definitely recognize that St. Paul Public Schools is on the right track in terms of planning, tracking, and dealing with the COVID response currently. So, one comment I'd like to make, and that is that even in the time between we have met and talked about these numbers and these plans, things are changing. We are back in a situation where every day we, even as a county, are having to make decisions based on exposures of our staff, of what our job in public health is to support other systems, and things are rapidly changing.
Thank you very much, Mary and our Ramsey County partners. At this point in time, we're going to pause for our first parking lot. So I will pass it back to Chair Foster.
Thank you very much. I will begin opening questions with Director Ellis.
Thank you for this information in this presentation. I'm just curious, you said that you support community members who test positive. Could you just say more about that?
I wasn't sure if Dana was going to jump on or not.
I'll let you go, Dr. Ogawa. You can talk about the essential services.
Yeah, so essential services. Yeah. So local public health is required by statute to support individuals who test positive for actually any reportable infectious disease on some level, but especially those that require people to isolate and quarantine in what are considered essential services. So that's food, housing, access to healthcare in those settings. And so we've worked and have provided everything from groceries to picking up things at pharmacies to delivering individuals who need specific PPE, things like that, to anyone in our county who needs it.
I'm just curious, so if a person that you are providing essential services to has to quarantine, they're obviously not able to go to work. What does support look like in that regard? I'm thinking of, our families who are working outside of the home right now and have, children.
Yeah. And so a lot of what also we've been doing as a county is, while we in public health have to support the basic needs, we've been linking to all of the other county services like Job Corps and other people who may need to be able to support individuals who may be losing jobs associated with that, or who need other supports in terms of other programs that the county, that we can connect them to.
I just
know that. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that part of that referral that happens from essential services is, referring to our financial assistance department as well. And there's been some changes in how the county is able to administer things like emergency assistance in light of the pandemic. So that's another way. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. I just had one more question, and it's still around having to quarantine and part of the essential services. Curious how employers are informed, because you cannot relay health information. So how are you supporting what is relayed to an employer for someone in the community?
Yeah, so that you're exactly right. And this gets very sticky very quickly. And actually, most of the employer exposures are also handled at the state level. So MDH tends to inform businesses of exposures by either clients or employees. And often what happens is that MDH can only say someone in your employment has tested positive, and you may need to evaluate and inform your employees of exposures. Yeah. Even as a county, it gets difficult because we're both a provider of care and we're an employer. And so sometimes we don't always get all of the information that we would expect we would get in terms of employers from employees. Employees have to also say that it's okay to give their name.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't have any further questions. I do, but I don't.
Director Brockert.
Thank you. Could we turn back to the slide that shows the rates of the cities within Ramsey County? I wonder if Sarah, are you in charge of that? Well, if we can't turn it back, maybe I can just ask the question about the number. Oh, there it is. What we've been hearing is that that there is a difference in impact amongst our various communities, particularly communities of color. But these numbers seem to belie that that notion, because as you can see, St. Paul has this one of the lowest rates of the cities. What's the explanation for that?
Yeah, part of what we're seeing in these rates is, and actually there's asterisks among some of the smaller communities. So a number of things come into play when we're calculating these rates. One is that a smaller population, a handful of cases may change that rate dramatically. So the smaller the population, the harder it is to trust or to recognize that the actual rate is more consistent and solidified. And so they can jump a lot faster or drop a lot faster. So the size of the community makes a big difference. The other issue is that we are seeing a broader community spread in general. And so we would expect that the numbers are sort of getting closer and closer together to each other. And then lastly, other things, some communities have also large, say, long-term care centers within them. And so an outbreak or I'm going to use one that's not on here as an example. Stillwater Prison had a large outbreak, and Washington County's rate jumped dramatically. So there can be sort of large congregate settings that can affect those rates as well. And again, in the past, earlier than August, when we would see changes in these rates, often it was because of that. But what we can say now is that that is not the case currently. There's no explanation other than Washington County recently that had a large outbreak at Stillwater Prison for these rates to be rising, other than generalized community spread. Yeah.
Okay, bear with me because that 38.4 number for the city of St. Paul, and I should know this, but I don't. Is that a number that reflects the ratio of positive to number of people tested, or is that based on the number of the overall population?
It takes into account overall population as well, but it is the case rate. So it is it's the number of positives to those tested.
Okay, because as you can probably guess, I'm coming around the barn to asking whether my biggest fear would, I hope is not true, but are we seeing that communities of color are not really getting tested to the degree that other communities are?
That's so actually, Director Roderick, that is a slightly harder question for me to answer. What I can tell you is that in the beginning, earlier, we were definitely seeing that communities of color did not have access to testing at nearly the rate that the white population did. That was, in truth, one of the main reasons that as Ramsey County, we specifically set up multiple mass no barrier, quite frankly, testing. In addition, we work with our community partners to specifically focus. We worked with organizations like the Corona Organization of Minnesota, Hmong American Partnership, CLUES. We continue to work with them specifically to get at communities of color and make sure that they have access to testing. So when I say our rates that we're seeing are rising, we know that at our testing sites, we are seeing on average anywhere from 25 to 50 to some sites, 75% of our client or of our patients being tested are people of color.
Okay, and I understand the difficulty in trying to draw conclusions and real conclusions from data. You can't always do that. However, the fact is that as I look at that number across the board, St. Paul, that's our school district.
Yep.
And maybe the simplest question I would ask, and I don't know if you can answer this with data, and maybe it's anecdotal, and I know that many of us have been affected and impacted with some of our own personal friends. So I guess I'll just ask you straight out: are people of color in the city of St. Paul do they seem to be more vulnerable to this COVID-19?
My short answer, and this is just my answer, is that we're seeing. It's going to sound strange, but I am phrasing it a little bit different. We are seeing whole communities of color being at a much higher risk for being exposed and for getting the disease. And I phrase it that way because, and then also in addition to that, we know that individuals of color are at a higher risk for complications associated with it. I talk about this though in a very broad sense. I'm a physician by training, but my the way that I focus on medicine is a public health lens, and it's not pure medicine. It has to do with social and political determinants of health. It has to do with economic and opportunity. It has to do with all of those components. And so I want to be careful about talking about it in a strict medical sense too. So that's a long answer, but my short answer, it's a long response, but my short answer is the populations within St. Paul and the populations of color are at much higher risk for lots of different reasons. Yeah.
Okay, and I want us to move on, but that's interesting because I see that connection between our students and the older citizens of their community. Just as well, obviously, I see myself as an elder of my community, and so the connection between the elders and the kids in school is obviously there, and in some cultures it may be even more intimate than in others. And so without getting into a big, I got a sociology minor, so I better stop talking. And besides that, Chair Foster's, I can see her face and she's saying, is Broderick going to ask questions for the rest of the night? So I will pass on, but I think you understood, Dr. Ogawa, where I was going on this, because I'm concerned about our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Foster. Director Vu.
Dr. Ogawa, thank you for joining us tonight. I just had a question about the 14-day lag time. Due to that lag time, what are some of the best practice approaches towards looking at the case rate as we knew it, 14-day case rate?
Yeah, what's essentially the best mitigation works at all, hopefully works at all points. And so it's difficult. It's just a matter of the fact that we don't always see the results of our mitigation for almost a month. We also don't see things rising related to a loosening of things or adding for anywhere from really what I tell folks is really for 4 weeks as well, because of the 14-day lag in data. And then the way that COVID is passed, you can become symptomatic up to 14 days after exposure. And so in some ways in public health, we've admitted that we are chasing old data regularly. And we do wish we had the crystal ball, because that's really the best way that we could potentially predict, but we don't have that yet. So, but a lot of the information that we look at is almost a month old. Yeah, and that's what also makes changes difficult. And testing those changes is difficult as well, because you often need to wait 4 weeks before you actually see the results of what your change in behavior has created.
Okay, thanks for explaining that. I just wanted to make that clear to our public viewers who's watching, that there is this window that we just don't know really what's going to happen. And whenever I go out and I communicate with people, that's what I tell them. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Allen?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you for the presentation.
Director Kopp?
Hi, thank you for the presentation. My colleagues have asked really good questions so far, so I don't think at this time I have anything to add. I just thank you for all your work, and I just want to thank Ramsey County. I'm always seeing the kinds of services and supports that Ramsey County is providing to the community, some of those essential services that you described before, and I know how important those are, especially as we're thinking about families who have maybe been taking leave from work to help their kids at home and all those different factors. And just, we're really fortunate to have a good partner in Ramsey County to take care of our kids and families. So thank you for your work and your time tonight.
Director Marchese?
Yes, I kind of coming up at the end of our roster. I don't have a lot of new turf. You've been very detailed in your presentation. I appreciate that. And again, also reiterate that I appreciate the work and the partnership that's been created that's so strong between our district and the county. It's critical at this time. It's always critical. It's really critical right now. And I know that we have to rely on people like you, Dr. Ogawa, and your staff to really guide the work that the district is doing. And I am very appreciative of your support for what we're doing. So thank you.
Seat Member Ali.
No questions, but thank you for your work you guys have been doing, and keep up the good work. I know it's hard, but thank you.
And Dr. Ogawa, again, echo my colleagues, sending our thanks to you and the team at Ramsey County, to Mary and our SPPS team as well, sending extreme thanks and gratitude for the ongoing work. Dr. Gothard, anything you'd like to provide before we move on to our second stage?
Yeah, I would like to thank the team for being here tonight. I know William Moore is on with us as well, and I'd like him to maybe share a little bit about some of his work with the Black community in specific, and just some of the outreach work that he's done. I'd also like to say that, Dr. Ogawa a couple of weeks ago made the comment about, Joel, the data you're looking at right now is really from Labor Day. And board members, I think I shared that with you in conversations as well. And that was really a big light bulb moment for me in terms of what she was just saying. It really put it into motion for me, kind of this cycle, if you will, in terms of what we're dealing with. The fact is today, though, that we're seeing an exponential growth today, every day, that's far different than it was in September. And what that means is that the numbers projecting looking forward, I don't have a crystal ball, but I can tell you they're going to be a lot bigger than 30, 40, through the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, just based on what we're seeing each and every day right now here in Ramsey County and just about every county in the state of Minnesota, sadly. But William, if you're still on with us, could you share just a little bit with our board tonight, some of the work that you're doing?
Yeah. So we've actually been doing a ton, all day, every day, everywhere, pretty much. I mean, we're doing everything from making sure that we get out flyers in, every different language out in the community for folks to let them know when free testing is, getting in contact with African-American owned businesses. I've been doing that specifically, even as far as just doing the ground and pound footwork of, me driving to the office, picking up free masks and walking up and down University, knocking on doors, walking in and letting individuals know, that we have masks for them to give, for them and their employees, but also customers that may be frequenting their stores. And it is, my community is a community at times that it's like very hard to tap into when you are representing an organization like Ramsey County Public Health, or really any government organization, because to not understand that means that you're not taking into account, historically speaking, how a lot of our organizations who are charged with helping to fix the inequities or address issues in our community are really the cause of a lot of the issues that have been that exist in our community for decades, right? So then it's hard to expect to just show up one day and say, hey, we're here to help you, and not think, for community members to say, yeah, we've heard that before, and then actually believe that. And so, when we're doing a lot of the outreach, some of the things that we're even combating really is the fact that, even some of the people in our community, even legitimately, wondering if the pandemic and COVID is a reality. We've heard everything from the pandemic being, called a plandemic, means that it is, government orchestrated. Everything from being said that it's not actually something that, African Americans don't catch. And, logically speaking, understand that, that's not accurate. But also, when I remove myself from being, a Ramsey County employee and being somebody who is a part of my community, means that I'm taking into account the trauma that the community has faced, right? Taking into account things like the Tuskegee experiment. And then right when we think that we can overlook that and that the community may be healed from that, you have stuff coming out recently, like, the whistleblower talking about, women, along the border, whether you believe it or not, or whether it's accurate or not, having, hysterectomies performed on them. That stuff gets into our community. And when there's already an immense amount of trust sown in the community, that doesn't help with reversing those efforts. It doesn't help with really reaching out and getting the community to to really go get tested as much as as much as other communities. So not only do we, have to battle when we're doing the outreach, are we not only battling, making sure that all these services and things are accessible to the community, it's even when we make it accessible, are they going to trust us enough to accept it? Because one thing that I have learned and experienced just firsthand, when you traumatize an individual, you traumatize a community enough, after a while, you don't even have to traumatize them anymore. They'll traumatize themselves. And what that often looks like is not that they're actively doing things to themselves, but maybe they're not actively even taking the precautions to make sure that they can stay healthy or that they can be safe, such as being proactive and getting tested, all because the fear of the organization providing the testing, or the fear of the organizations who supposedly say they're going to help, is too great of a fear. So you kind of close back within yourself and say, I'd rather take care of myself because I can trust those that look like me, that live next to me, that live around me, and that work with me, versus somebody from the outside coming in to do so. And so it's really been it's work that I wouldn't change. It's work that needs to be done, and it's work that I'll continue doing. But I just want to make sure that it's not overlooked how hard it is to do outreach in our community, maybe even a little bit more difficult than some other communities. Not saying it's not difficult in other communities, but we're dealing with a lot of different layers of stuff going on when you talk about the African-American community and dealing with medical systems or healthcare systems or public health organizations.
Thank you so much, William. I really appreciate your contribution. I've appreciated learning these stories and your efforts through you as well. So thank you for all that you do and that you'll continue to do. Chair Foster, I have no further questions.
All right, I will turn it back over to the team to continue on the vote.
Thank you, Chair Foster. At this point in time, Sarah, if you could bring up the slides for our second group, dialing back in temporary shifts. All right, at this point in time, we will move into our second update. And if just a gentle reminder that there will parking lot all of our remaining questions after our fourth update of our round here. So at this point in time, I would invite our Director of Research Evaluation and Assessment, Dr. Stacy Gray-Echevarria, to come up and share with us the dial back and temporary shifts information that we have for you today. Dr. Gray-Echevarria.
Good evening. Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Gothard, and SEEB member Ali. Next slide, please. To date, we've established and reported on 23 readiness targets for transitioning into hybrid. We know that those readiness targets were developed to assist with the safe reopening process. Once we reopen as a district, our goal is to definitely continue through hybrid until all students can return to school in person safely. But because the readiness targets were designed to inform when to reopen or when to re-engage in in-person learning, they will not be adequate to inform decisions on if and when we must reverse the course. So reversing the course looks like adjusting, dialing back, or pivoting. So to that end, we have developed a framework for a decision-making process that incorporates two primary paths of decision-making that will be required to make when and if we need to change the course. And this information is in the slide that we're currently looking at. The first path is the dial back or dialing back. So this path is taken in response to widespread changes. In this case, the district will pivot from the current instructional model to the prior stage or prior instructional model. An impact will be felt across the district. When we are dialing back, one would see pivots such as the bulleted list here Being in hybrid, we would be pivoting to distance learning, or being in person, we would pivot back to hybrid. The second path is the temporary shift. This path is taken in response to a localized concern at a site, a school building, and/or a program. Adjustments are then made to the regular running of that site or program or building as appropriate. This path is heavily dependent upon the guidance provided through our district experts in conjunction with regional experts and partners. An impact in this pathway of temporary shift is felt at the site or the building or the program. When we are on this path, when implemented, one would see adjustments such as the bulleted list of quarantining a class or grades or an entire school for a specific number of days that would be determined. Temporary closing of a building for deep cleaning, or adjusting an instruction to accommodate a decreased level of staffing. Next slide, please. Each of the two paths, dialing back and temporary shifts, has a set of indicators that will be used for decision making. Unlike the readiness targets that were intentionally designed to be firm, fixed, and discrete, these indicators to be used for dialing back and/or temporary shifts are designed to be combined and used together as a basis for decision making, decision-focused discussions, and for use with cross-functional teams. The one exception is the governor's executive order, which I will explain. This slide displays the indicators for dialing back and then for temporary shifts as well. For the dial back indicators, you'll notice the two categories, one for K-5 or pre-K-5, and then the other for 6-12. The very first indicator, which is Governor Executive Order, does stand alone. And that is because with the governor's executive order, we will follow that according to the way that it is written and the way that we are directed. After that, there are three indicators that will work in concert with each other. And that relationship is designated by the and signal symbol on the slide. So you'll see Governor Executive Order, or, and then the other three indicators with and in between. These three indicators, the Ramsey County 14-day case rate of 50 or more, the City of St. Paul 14-day case rate of 50 or more, and 50 to 75% of our buildings having 5 or more confirmed cases from staff and students on site, work together to then trigger a conversation to base decisions on. I will denote that the last indicator of the 50 to 75% of buildings, this indicator is important because it does give us an indication or a gauge of internal exposure or source of exposure, which is important for us in having considerations about dialing back or at the K-5 or 6-12 level. The 6-12 indicators parallel the K-5 indicators, but they have different numbers. Please notice the county 14-day case rate is now 30 for 6-12. The city 14-day case rate is now 30 for K-12 for 6-12, and the percentage of buildings is now between 25 and 50% of buildings with 5 or more confirmed cases. The temporary shift indicators are as follows on the slide: instructional or operational needs of the site that exceed the availability of staff. And here you'll see an and as well as an or. Situational concerns related to the confirmed cases and the potential for spread. I'll note here with the situational concerns related to confirmed cases and the potential for spread, embeds the idea of the source of exposure, internal or external exposure, which is called out on the previous levels for dialing back. At this time, I will end the portion 2, and I transition to the third part of the update, student support, beginning with Executive Director Hans Ott.
Thank you, Stacy. At this point in time, Sarah, if you could slide to the third section, student supports, EDL, and credit recovery. As Dr. Gray Achea mentioned, at this point in time, we will invite 2 folks to the screen, Executive Director of the Office of Digital and Alternative Education, Hans Ott, and the Director of the Office of College and Career Readiness, Darren Ginter.
Chair Foster, Superintendent Gothard, members of the board, Steve Member Ali, I appreciate the time to talk to you this evening. Just a quick overview of some of the things we're doing for student supports during this stage and other scenarios coming ahead. So we provide extended day learning, which is part of targeted services that the state authorizes us to do and provides us funding based upon enrollment to achieve. So starting on November 4th, we initiated targeted services for our K-8 students at Washington. We were able to bring in and register families and students from across the district that would be bused after their school day to join the programming at Washington. The targeted services, as it would be during the school year, is a mix of applied academics and academic supports. And for that, we would use and teach math, literacy. There's a music component. And in this case, we're using keyboarding or piano, digital audio, and ukulele during this time. We also have our Freedom School work going on for grades 3 through 8, which are incorporated into all the programming. And for our youngest students, we continue to build off of the Freedom School's work in partnership with TPT and their Hero Elementary program, which has been really well received. Enrollment has been strong at the start. We're looking at about 80 kids on the Monday, Wednesday program, 70 kids on the Tuesday, Thursday, and almost 170 students registering for the Saturday program. Though the attendance hasn't matched the enrollment yet, we're working to support families to get students there and take advantage of the staff and the resources we have. Looking ahead at targeted services and EDL for extended day learning, for when we come back to a hybrid model, we're looking at being able to support a Monday, Wednesday, and Tuesday, Thursday type group where kids would get a portion of their additional supports face-to-face one day and then virtually the other day. And that kind of planning's been in the works along the way, and again would have a mix of applied and academic supports during that time. It is a key component, we know, to have synchronous time. It's not an asynchronous process to provide additional supports to kids. We need, to the extent possible, adults and students in the same room together, and when not possible to do that virtually, having adults and students in the same room to do small group instruction, team building, activities, and other things like that. And we've been working towards having that happen. And we do that. We look at periods of time about 1 hour and 45 minutes per session for the kiddos. We also have built in supports for our students so that they are on track coming into high school. And we call that program SVPS On Track. And that's where we offer funding for daytime support services for programs like English, math, and AVID at our middle schools. And these are meant to get kids caught up and support them as they're learning new material in the middle school program. So for extended day, we have the current programming going at Washington alongside the academic support centers. We have plans for when we do come back to hybrid to support students with additional supports, and we have current work going on in our middle schools at this time. And I will pass it on to Director Darren Ginter.
Thanks, Hans. Chair Foster, members of the board, Superintendent Gothard, and Steve Member Ali. I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of the current efforts related to credit recovery and the related student supports to keep students on track for graduation. We know that in distance learning, it's been a significant challenge. I have a 7-year-old at home. It's been a challenge with a teacher, as a partner, and as an administrator myself, it's a challenge for sure. And it's been a huge challenge, I know, for many of our students and families. SPPS educators, support staff, administrators are doing anything and everything they can to continue developing supports to adapt to meet the needs of our students and families. Some of the current credit recovery supports, we've seen an uptick in the number of students in grades 9-12 projected to need credit recovery this year. During the school year, primary credit recovery happens through Evening High School. This year, we've got 400 students enrolled during Q1 of Evening High School. That ends this week. And our initial data is indicating we're going to have nearly 900 students needing credit recovery at some point during the year. That's nearly double the number we had last year. We did have some unique circumstances last year during Q3 and Q4, as we know, where students did receive passing grades, but the number is significant. And the courses that are offered virtually in a distance learning model with synchronous teacher-led components as a part of it. And some of the specific supports within Evening High School include numerous student and family contacts, phone calls, emails from admin, support staff, and teachers. Students are receiving weekly updates through Schoology to ensure that students and families are aware of the work needed to be completed. And then also the teachers in Evening High School are being really creative and responsive, making adjustments to assignments and assessments as they're seeing how students are engaging or not engaging throughout the time. So they're doing everything they can to engage students. Teachers are also providing individualized supports for struggling students as needed throughout the quarter. Next, I wanted to acknowledge, moving on to the work of our Academic Support Center, or ASC, which is located at Washington Technology Magnet School under the leadership of Jackie Turner. Schools are receiving support for their traditional school day courses and credit recovery courses through a referral process. So students are referred by staff and have been receiving academic and social emotional supports since October at the ASC. So a big thank you to all the education assistants, teaching assistants, temporary staff, retired teachers, contractors, community partners, volunteers, the list goes on that are supporting and serving students at the ASC. Next, I want to talk a little bit about our existing school efforts around credit recovery and the support. Schools are utilizing various academic support teams to support students in any way possible. Schools are very focused on meeting the academic and in addition to that, the social emotional needs. We know they go hand in hand. Students' well-being needs to be supported in order to be successful academically. I want to highlight some of the existing school efforts to keep kids on track for graduation or to get them back on track. So some of our schools have been completing phone call blitzes where all support staff are collaborating to connect with a caseload of students and families to increase student engagement. Our school counselors are doing one-to-one counseling and small group counseling through Google Meet to support students academically, social, emotionally, and then also, as Member Ali has mentioned, the college and career needs that are needed during this time of their 12th grade year in particular, but throughout their journey in our schools. Individualized supports for all students to navigate tech needs, improve study skills, and identify resources that are needed by students and families. Our special education case managers are doing everything they can to meet as frequently as possible virtually with students and families to do anything within their capacity to help those students succeed who may need individualized supports. And then also our after-school English language learner tutoring program has been happening at our language academy schools. So our EL learners are receiving tutoring and additional literacy supports during distance learning. And then I also wanted to highlight, under the leadership of John Bobolink, the American Indian Education Office is working with multiple community partners to develop tutoring for students. And they're also doing that, the family and student connections on weekly communication to assess needs and provide assistance as needed so that students have any obstacles out of the way so they can succeed in our system. And then finally, new opportunities. So based on recent mid-quarter data and feedback from schools and students, more and more of our 12th grade students were failing courses during this first quarter during mid-quarter grades than in our previous years. The Academic Support Center is now offering a Senior Blitz workshop to hopefully support those 12th graders on Saturdays, as we know that it's crucial to keep students on track and or to get students back on track before things get closer and closer to June. Additionally, our principals have been working within their buildings and collaboratively with their fellow principals to develop additional 12th grade supports. They're looking at various credit recovery efforts, academic support systems that can engage students in existing structures, and then also as we transition to potential in-person supports that can be done safely, what they can do within those structures. As one of our high school principals told me, and of course I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, we have an amazing staff. We know that if students engage with our incredible teachers and support staff, that we can get our students to the finish line. We just need to hook our kids. And so many of the lessons learned from previous years and in the summer are based on successes of our outreach coordinators or navigators that provide intensive student supports. And I've seen it firsthand, both in summer learning and then also at the Gateway to College ALC. You know, the supports from these individual one-to-one adults that are there to provide needed resources and positive relational support to keep students motivated and focused on reaching their goals. And the last thing I would just mention, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that while I highlighted multiple student supports across our district, it falls short of honoring all the tireless efforts of our teachers and support staff and our building and district leaders who I know are working at all hours of the day and night to meet the needs of our kids and families. And with that, you know, we're going to keep adapting and responding to the needs of our kids and families. So at this time, I'd like to pass the presentation along to Executive Director of Human Resources, Kenyatta McCarty. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Foster, Superintendent Gothard, members of the board. This evening, Assistant Superintendent Collins and I would like to just go over some information regarding stages 2 and 3 and updates for you. Sarah, if you go to the next slide, please. Our focus this evening is going to be a high-level overview on the staffing assessments that we've been doing, how we're preparing our administrators for stages 2 and 3, and then also how we are planning for implementation. We will be providing a high-level overview for you this evening, but plan to provide you a deeper dive in the December Board of Education meeting. As you know, we've been talking a lot about our readiness targets for staffing, and that has been a 95% that the stage school instructional staff would be needed for hybrid would be available. That is based on aggregate data. As we have been working through this process, what we have had to do is look at what our needs are at the individual building level. And so I can talk to you a little bit about that this evening. As we look at needs at the individual building levels, we are looking at the individual positions that are necessary as well as licensure for those positions. This is based on information such as the virtual learning school enrollment and how many sections are needed for both hybrid as well as at virtual learning. And we're also looking at accommodations that are needed for staff. I've mentioned a little bit about those accommodations. There are 2 different types of accommodations that we're looking at right now. One of them is under the ADA, which is Americans with Disabilities Act, which we're required to interact with our staff around what's called an interactive meeting, where we look at what their accommodations needs are and work with their supervisor to determine whether or not we're able to meet those needs and whether or not their accommodation can be met and if they're able to perform the essential functions of their duty. The other type of accommodation that we're seeing during this time is one under the executive order under the governors. And so we're looking at that as well. And so as we look at those particular accommodations, what I need you to understand is accommodations have traditionally been for things such as supportive technology. It might be for specific equipment to be able to perform the functions of the job. It might be a reduced or adjustment of the schedule. And so that's what we've typically looked at. What we're seeing right now is that the majority of our requests are to work in distance learning, so to support the virtual learning school. And just to give you an idea of what we're looking at in terms of volume, last year we had about 39 ADA accommodations or accommodations that we were working with as a department for the district. The document that you received, I want to say last week, said that we had about 889, or excuse me, we had 386 requests, and that is about an 889% increase. As of today, we have 410 requests, so we're right over 1,000% increase in terms of just the sheer volume of accommodations. I want to assure you that our team is working very diligently to go through those processes with our schools to determine first if staff qualify for ADA, and if they do not, what the next steps are, and we're communicating with staff around that as well. We will be meeting with our principals in the upcoming weeks to talk through what their staff availability looks like and to help them and support them in determining where staff will be assigned during hybrid. At this time, I do want to pass it over to my colleague, Assistant Superintendent Andrew Collins, and he'll talk to you a little bit about what we're doing to prepare our administrators and also plan for implementation for stages 2 and stages 3.
Thank you, Executive Director McCarty. Through the chair, we've been spending our time with our administrators for the last month, really doing some intensive orientations. And in the executive summary that was provided to you, we kind of gave you a snapshot of the trainings and the themes that we covered with our administrators during the month of October. This work continues in terms of how we're problem solving and how we're being solution focused in terms of looking at situations in each of our buildings and going deeper to make sure that our administrators are prepared. We have a large number of subject matter experts in St. Paul Public Schools, and it's really been an incredible activity organizing those and sharing those perspectives to make sure that each of our administrators are ready for the launch of stage 2 and stage 3. When we think about, we know that every building in St. Paul is so different. And I heard a board director reference a theme of endurance earlier in this meeting, and I really want to also acknowledge that similar theme for our administrators. As our administrators are continuing to support distance learning and going deeper and improving things on a daily basis and working with staff and students, they're also working to prepare their building specific plans. And these plans include really every operational aspect in regards to how those buildings function. So again, wanting to just acknowledge the work that our leaders are doing in consult with classroom teachers and with different groups within their building in terms of how they're collaboratively constructing these building specific plans to make sure that everything would be ready for a projected January start. As we think about implementation, we're right in the middle right now from a timeline perspective of analyzing the last enrollment for stage 2 and stage 3 for the virtual learning school. So what that means is there was a deadline of November 4th that was shared with our community, encouraging our families to enroll in VLS. And what we're doing now is we're in the process of taking all of that enrollment and really verifying it and finalizing that in context of what that means for each school. And what when we think about planning for implementation, we know that enrollment and staffing allocations are never perfectly divisible. And when we think about how we're supporting the virtual learning school and hybrid instruction, we're in some cases just dividing that staff accordingly. So when we think about the work that's happening right now is we're taking that enrollment from the virtual learning school and we're literally going in and hand scheduling every single section across the district to minimize grade split assignments or multi-age assignments. So it's a big task that we're going to complete by the end of this week. And then as Executive Director McCarty referenced, we're going to be sitting down with each of our administrators beginning next week and really going over those conversations individually to not only make sure that that they clearly understand and have a perspective surrounding their total enrollment in their building, what students are participating and signed up for VLS, what students are projected to participate in hybrid, what that means from like a section projection, how many sections of kindergarten are we going to have in hybrid? How many sections of kindergarten are we going to have in VLS? We're really going to work with our administrators and actually provide that information to them, verify that, and then dive into the conversation surrounding whether or not, and really looking at and examining the requests surrounding accommodations via ADA and the executive order. So those conversations will begin next week, and we will hopefully have them wrapped up within about a week and a half. and then continue to move forward with that information to make sure that we're ready for a successful projected launch in January. So with that, I'll pause and actually pass it over to Chief Watkins at this point.
Thank you, team. This brings us to the end of today's update. And at this point in time, we are to our second parking lot, and I will pass it back to Chair Foster.
Thank you very much. I will open it up with questions or comments from board members, beginning with Director Ellis.
I have questions for Mr. Darren Ginther. That number of students in credit recovery is very unsettling with me. Can we talk through a little bit more about those numbers? Are we talking about students from every high school? What's happening with our students who are struggling in middle school? Just talk me through a little bit of the numbers, because I was going to ask the question and then you said it's more than it has been. The number of students who are needing credit recovery is more than it was last year. So help me.
Yeah, through the chair. Director Ellis, I'd like to start with saying that we don't have those final grades yet. And we know that every year there becomes a bottleneck at the end of a quarter, students struggling at times who are able to get to the finish line of passing their classes. The data is about double the number of fails at mid-quarter this year compared to last year, actually a little bit more than double. And so I believe it was at about 16% at mid-quarter last year and about 36 or 37% this year district-wide for 9-12. I'll follow up with additional information regarding 6-8, but for the credit-bearing courses in 9-12, it certainly was higher. I would say, and it's a shout out to our assistant superintendents and division of schools with Dave Watkins, that collaboration with principals, both in their buildings and then also peer-to-peer with other principals. We're really looking to get innovative of what that, both credit recovery, but then also how do we keep students on track during distance learning, and engagement being that primary piece. So we're working on various supports to make that happen.
Okay, you had said during the presentation that the supports that are available for students, and this is the part where I'm really struggling with my own 7th grader, right? Which is the expectation is that students are reaching out to teachers when teachers are clearly seeing that there are things that, like, students are not getting things complete. And so who are teachers tapping into to help coordinate support for students? Because I know that our teachers are connecting with students, but you kept mentioning other types of support. And so is that happening sooner in this process, or is it happening later? If you tracked that.
Through the chair, I think, Director Ellis, that there's multiple pieces with it. So I mentioned the Academic Support Center. That is certainly one referral process for some students, and it works for some students and families. That has been, I know, very well received for many. And then the other piece too, the in-building supports. I know I've got a 7-year-old. I know that our teacher has been reaching out proactively. I can personally say that we've reached out to the school counselor and through that teacher. So again, I think to your point, what we don't want it to be is students and families are the ones that need to be the proactive to find resources and to find supports. And so I know, as I mentioned, those academic support teams, and really the focus of this one was on more of the high school piece. I know that our support staff, counselors, social workers, EAs, TAs, and buildings are doing everything they can, like the phone blitz or Google Meets, really trying to engage families as best they can. And that's where that collaboration is happening, of what are some innovative solutions we can find during these times. So I don't know if that answered it totally directly, but I do know a huge initiative. I've heard this from our middle school principals, is to be pushing out more and more information and communication to families, having our families have to navigate the system.
Okay, and then I wanted to ask, because I had asked, but I don't think you answered it. The 400, the number 400, is that 9 through 12? Is that more 9th graders, more 12th graders? Where are we seeing the larger number in recovery needing to happen?
Yeah, evening high school is primarily 11th and 12th graders. And typically it'll be 12th graders, not the greatest need, but the finish line is closest to, and it's been prioritized for 12th and 11th graders. And I will add that some of our buildings, Como and Johnson in particular, last year started like more in-school credit recovery, where there were more 9th and 10th graders able to access those supports. So it's not allowing students to get, further and further behind, as they're before they get to be 11th and 12th grade to get to evening high school.
Okay, and then just one question, and I think this is probably a larger question. If our students are struggling in distance learning and then having to do online evening class, what is the difference between the two? I'm kind of like, if I'm struggling here, it's pretty much similar to the same format and online in the evening, and so I'm a little confused there. So what is the difference?
Through the chair, Director Ellis, I offer that the supports that we're looking to create and those additional supports are needed for sure. Providing the same medicine that's not working potentially for a student is not the route we want to go. We need to be responsive and adaptive to our students. And that's where, there's been a lot of collaboration with our principals recently, looking to adjust from our, what are the things we've learned from this Q1 and even from last spring with distance learning, the supports we need, which I know is one of the reasons that the Academic Support Center was lifted up, because we know that some students are going to need that in-person one-to-one, or small group interventions. And so I saw that some others popped up. Chief Academic Officer Wilcox Harris, if you'd like to add.
Sure, through the chair, I just couldn't resist. You are spot on. You cannot remedy something with the same remedy that hasn't been working well enough. Where we're seeing the best traction, and Chief Turner can elucidate further, is when we can get students to the academic support centers, particularly seniors. She's seen seniors coming in droves. We have started a blitz to let seniors, parents, counselors, principals know that these courses, these Saturday chances exist. Are there enough? No. There are about 8 between now and November and December. But at those times, we're seeing students who are digging in, getting the work done. They need a little help, a couple of questions answered. It's not just about turning in assignments. It's about getting the knowledge transferred and out there to show the teacher and to demonstrate that they've reached standard. So Chief Turner, if you want to add, we've that has grown exponentially since we communicated in 4 languages that these Saturday 3-hour sessions are available to any senior who's failing 1 or more class.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just wanted to add also, it's not seniors or Saturdays are really where we're doing the blitz. But at this particular point, we've opened up for seniors that they can walk in at any time, and anytime that they have time or anytime that there's a need, that they can come physically to Washington, and we will make sure that they receive transportation home. We're using bus cards to get them to and from, which typically takes us time to register students. Why we need students registered is for bus. But if students are not needing an actual bus ride through the district, we are able to service seniors right on the spot. So we're strongly encouraging our high school seniors to just come. As others have said, it's really a place for them to have reliable, consistent Wi-Fi, a quiet space to get their work done. And there are also others there who can help them with their assignments or help them with their questions that they may have, or help them write their essays or complete their projects. So it's what we're learning and finding out about the academic support centers is that we had a lot of plans for how things would go, but what we're learning is that we need to be just in time. So regardless of what the students' need is on that day or that week, we are flexible and amendable to be able to just in time to get that particular assignment done, or get that question answered, or get that iPad fixed, or get them on them using their particular technology better, or answering their questions. So we have started the Saturday workshops for seniors to try and help them have that time to be able to catch up. We've also offered, like I said, same day walk-in. That communication did go out to all counselors, and it's going out to families as we speak this week, so that families also know. about that experience.
Okay, this was all really good information. It didn't still answer the question, what's the difference between, you know, our distance learning and having to do the same thing in a recovery course? There isn't a difference? It's not.
So, well, I think that through the chair, so the difference with the academic support center is that it's in person. And so what we've learned from our high school, a lot of our high school students, as well as the younger students, is that they need that person. They need that accountability. They need to walk into a space and have somebody in front of them saying, okay, keep going, you can do it. So we're finding that our high school students, especially our high school students, it's not that they don't know the content, they need help with the motivation. And they need that space. They need that space that looks similar to a classroom, looks similar to their school, even though it's not their school. It's that structure that I have with going. So a number of the students, they get up, they get on the bus, they come in, they get their breakfast, and they go up to their class and they do their work. And often our secondary students, they sit there and do their work consistently for several hours. And then they get back on the bus and go back home. So that's what they need. And that's what the difference is. It's not at home when maybe you're laying in your bed, or you're maybe not as paying as much attention to the screen, or maybe you get distracted because there's too many other people in the house. So it's a quiet place where they can stay held accountable. And we have staff there helping them with their homework or their assignments if they need it, or if they just need to be left alone and quiet, we have the space for them to do that as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I have nothing further.
Thank you. Director Broderick?
I don't have any further questions. I would gladly yield my time back to Director Ellis if she had some more follow-up, because I was interested very much in what she was talking about.
I think that requires some offline learning for me, Broderick.
Thank you. Director Vu?
Yes, I had two questions. It seems like engagement seems to be a criteria that sort of helps us understand whether our students are successful or not in distance learning. Is there any metrics or indicators or situations at this moment to sort of help us better identify which students need more support and resources to get better engagement? Is there any kind of like kind of how we have with the hybrid, there's 4 stages, right? I mean, engagement sort of wanes, comes and goes. Is there anything that we have right now to sort of be more proactive in identifying that with our students?
Through the chair, I want to start out, and I expect others will add to these stories, but we are meeting regularly with senior high principals, and they have conveyed to us that they need to do very specific touch points with their students. They need to have a chance for students to come directly to their localized location. That's what they dream of, being able to have the students affiliated with them right there at the school, and then provide in-person tutoring and support. We heard this over and over again. We also heard about the work that their leadership teams are doing to identify every student by name. Which student is there, which student has never been there, which student has been there and done 2% of the assignments, and which have been there and done 20%. And they're going in individually and meeting with those students and following up with them. We also sadly heard that there's a group of students, a small group, that they haven't been able to reach. And that is the group that troubles the principals and the assistant soups who were there for the conversation, Josh and F.A. It troubles all of us greatly because they're not on the map and they're difficult to find. But what they conveyed to us is, yes, they need the district's resources, they need the district's support, but they need to exercise a plan that works for their high schools and for their students. And I'll pause in case someone would like to build on that.
So to build off of that, Chief Wilcox Harris, going to invite ASUP Collins to the screen. We'll share a little bit about the dialogues and discussions that are happening with the leaders, some of the things that you alluded to. And we'll also invite Dr. Stacy Gray-Achea up to talk a little bit more about some of the information in Schoology and how that's used. Superintendent Collins.
Thank you, Chief Watkins. Through the chair, Director Ellis. So, and members of the board, really. So, in the conversation that you know I've been having, and I'll personalize it with my two high school principals, Washington and Como. I'm thinking about it in terms of, you know, those conversations that we've had that really talk about, they understand the urgency. And again, what they're looking at is saying, how do we mobilize and really marshal our resources in a different way? So I think the first piece is to also understand that, you know, each of our buildings are beginning to isolate the data to really understand the exact numbers of who we're actually talking about, right? So we are prioritizing the interventions. And again, this is some of the pieces that Director Ginther shared. But to the point of which there's a spreadsheet. I was shared with a spreadsheet that basically had a list of every senior. And basically that building developed a criteria to say, is this student on track? Are they at risk? What's the plan? Who's the person of contact? Who's the staff member that's reaching out? When did they reach out? And then specifically what next steps look like. So I think that first piece is making sure that data only speaks when it's organized. And so they're organizing the data to really create and to be effective in terms of what action they're actually developing at a building level. You know, buildings are adopting a theme of what can I do today? So again, I don't want to understate the level of urgency that our administrators feel that they're beginning to share with their building staff about what can we do each and every day for each of our students, and how do we think about leveraging every staff person in the building and potentially utilizing them in a little different way, ways in which they may not have ever worked before, but we need to be student focused, student centered in this, and we need to be action oriented. So we need to modify people's roles. We need to really leverage all the staff in the building, and we need to reach out. So as it was shared earlier in terms of one of the pieces is about engagement and reaching out to families and problem solving with students. Is this an issue where the student, I mean, there's a variety of issues, from, it could be a family situation or anything from technology, and we want to be able to support that. And we want to work productively also in collaboration with the Office of Family Engagement, and understand that what services do we have and how do we leverage Language Line as we're reaching out to families, because reaching out to a student is one thing, but how do we reach out to the family to make sure that the family understands what's going on right now and what services and supports are available for the students. So lots of outreach, and really just, again, what we're doing right now is wanting to think about saying, how do we create some sustainable systems that help students feel success and help staff feel success? Everyone's working hard, and we need to make sure that motivation and positive momentum are key in this. So that's part of some of the conversations that we're having with our building administrators. There's lots of conversations that they're having as a group of secondary administrators that talk about, again, every building's different, but we need to be focused, we need to be action oriented, and we need to be tracking the data and reaching out to our kids and bringing them in and listening to our students and saying, what do they need? It's not about what the adults can do, it's how the adult can help the child based upon what the child's perspective and the student's perspective is about what help looks like and what help is needed. So with that, I'll pass it back.
Through the chair, Director Vu, two metrics that we used during the spring distance learning to gauge engagement were attendance or check-in, as well as interaction with Schoology. So we used attendance for all grades. It was not perfect, and that continues to have its challenges in distance learning, but we are continuing to use those two metrics as one part of looking at how engagement could look. So we have dashboards, internal dashboards, where we report the attendance check-in, which is a little bit stronger this year. There's a different process, but we report that attendance check-in as one metric of engagement. It's certainly at the very basic level. And the other one that we report district-wide through a dashboard as another very foundational metric of engagement is the percentage of students that are engaging in submissions through their Schoology learning platform. That again is limited because it is only particular grades that are using it. Our pre-K through second grade is not using Schoology. So this does give us a representation, but those are also two pieces to the puzzle as we look at engagement.
Does anybody else have anything to add at this point? I'm just glad to hear that everybody's thinking things through at this point and being adaptive, because our students are going to go through highs and lows. I know mines are. So the more different ways that we're looking at this, I think we'll get better at it. I think I heard I think Assistant Superintendent Collins say that data doesn't really tell us anything until it's organized. And I think we're at the point right now where we need to start organizing what we have in terms of what our students are doing, what they're submitting in, and just how everything is going. We need to start looking at that. Another question that I had is about the dial back. This is, from what I understand, the dial back is based primarily on case rate data, unless Governor Walz says something different. And we've already established that that's 14 days lagging. My question is there any further criteria that we can look at to better inform that decision that we have to make more proactively?
Sure, Director, through the chair, Director Vu. Yes, in terms of the dial back for pre-K 5 and for 6-12, two of the indicators to be used in concert are based on that 14-day case rate at the county and at the city level, and they are a lag. The third one is the percentage of our buildings that have 5 or more confirmed cases from staff and students on site. And that data is reported from our district COVID reporting platform. So that data is just-in-time data. Our COVID team receives it just as people put it in. And so we're able to really use those pieces in concert to help jump that conversation off of if we should have the dial back or not. So correct, 2 of them are in lag, and then 1 of them is just in time as reported. And we are tracking the number of confirmed cases as they happen. We'll have a particular report to do that.
I do think it's important to point out, Director Vu, that individual schools and cases that are happening on a daily basis are a leading indicator, meaning that we may not get to that number because we're having trouble staffing a school, or we have the 5 or more cases. So we kind of look at it in both ways. You know, is there great potential for cases to be spread based on that number of the case rate, or are we seeing it on a daily basis to a point where it's impacting the ability to offer safe and effective services?
Okay. I think this information helps. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Director Allen?
I just had a couple questions. One, how do those numbers affect the academic support centers? The attendance is at like 120. It's kind of a lot of numbers, and we're going up. So how does that affect that? And then when we say 5 or more jump starts the conversation, that doesn't necessarily mean that we dial back. That just means that we start the conversation about whether to dial back or not.
Through the chair, Director Allen, I'll answer the second question first.
Cool.
it is one of the indicators used in concert with the other ones. We in the space of either dialing back or temporarily shifting, we're constantly monitoring the data. So it's one of the things, and it definitely could start the conversation and we look at the other pieces, or it could be an extreme situation where it would take precedence. It's in this space of dialing back, it's very context specific. It's almost a point where you have as many ways to enter the conversation as you do to exit the conversation. So we look at all of the indicators. They're very important. Any one of them could take precedence in terms of dialing back, but definitely looking at them all together. And it may be a very different situation in the conversation to temporarily shift. I would stop there. Mary Langworthy is much better at explaining the nuances and the complexity of decision making than I.
Through the chair, thanks, Director Achea. I am monitoring all of Director Allen, I'm monitoring all of the case information and working closely with the administrators that are on site. But we do have that building level data to review. And so our plans have been to have me monitor that and bring that forward when we're seeing increasing case rates. We're not seeing internal spread, which means if we have a positive case in a building, we may have to quarantine people as a result of that case. And right now we're not seeing that internal spread that other people have now been infected from that initial case. So we have really good positive measures in place. We have great layering in place around social distancing and wearing masks and staying home when you're sick, which are help preventing a lot of those occurrences. But as we have more buildings up, we'll continue to monitor that and work in partnership with the administrators. And then I'll bring that information and key pieces forward to our leadership so that we can monitor and have further discussions about any plans or decisions to dial back.
Chief Turner, with regards to the academic support centers, I believe Director Allen was asking about the number of participants we have there. Can you just walk through some of the procedures you have in place there? It is still, we're operating it just as we would any of our in-person facilities. So just take us through some of those.
So and make sure I understand you, Dr. Gothard, to answer questions about the numbers, or Director Allen, did you have a question about at what point would we dial back and not have the academic center anymore? Or
correct. That's my question is, at what point do we dial back and what system do we have in place to measure that?
So as we look at the two different options, the dial back option, if that as a district, if we make the option to dial back because of our case rate, the academic support center would be included in that decision. If we are going with the option of, if we're impacted by the, I'm gonna get the term wrong, so help me out, colleagues. Circling back, no, not circling back.
Temporary shift.
Temporary shift.
Temporary shift.
With the temporary shift. Then that would be, the decision would be based on 1495 Rice Street. What is happening at 1495 Rice Street that would determine whether or not we would need to shift back. And I would say that since we have been in operation since October 19th with Mary Langworthy's team, we have done extremely well with making sure that we are following the guidelines, social distancing with masks. We're consistently reminding students that masks are a requirement in the program. We are making sure that we are encouraging staff to stay home if they're sick, even if they have a question, have a sniffle, a cough, they are staying home. And we're making sure that we are monitoring staffing daily. One of the goals is to actually overstaff so that we can be supportive and continue to welcome students when they're there. If we are down 20% staff, or if we're down 10 people, that we can continue to offer programming because we actually have more staff than we actually need. So that's been some of the ways that we've been handling it. We also know that social distance is a must And at Washington, we can easily do that. And so that's been extremely helpful to have the physical space to be able to do that.
That was the second piece of my question. Is there a consideration for opening up a second or third site to continue the distancing of students that are absolutely necessary?
So through the chair, thank you. So as you all know, you may remember from one of the presentations several weeks ago to the Board of Education, we did have an idea, and we're excited to roll out actually 5 academic support centers, one in each region, you may remember. And that was, I was gung-ho that was going to happen. After further thought, planning, staffing, recruitment, and preparation, it appears that it's realistic right now for us to continue to support the center in order to really be able to do it well. I think we should continue to support the one location. We still have plenty of room at Washington. Washington is configured in a house format, if you will. So the building there's houses, and right now we're in 2 houses, and even within those 2 houses, we still have another whole portion of the house before we actually fill. So we have 4 floors that we can still go at Washington, and even within those floors, we can add the other side. So we have several different configurations that we can still stay and remain safe there. We're using both the front entrance as well as the back entrance of the building. We're having students come in certain doors and go out other doors. And so I think we can serve actually several additional 100 students right there at Washington, just because of how much space we actually do have and the way that we configure and work, how students move around the building. Although after the ideal of expanding to another site is not totally eliminated off the table, but at this time, we want to put all of our efforts into continuing to support the one and making sure students get to that one site.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all of your work.
Thank you. Director Kopp.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to build off some of the good questions my colleagues have asked. What would be the maximum capacity for students at Washington in the Academic Support Center?
So we initially had, through the chair, Director Kopp, we had initially went with 200. That was the most that we could do per day at Washington. And we're serving about that if you look at the number of academic support center students as well as the extended day learning students. We're really close to that. We hover close to that on any given day. However, we also didn't take into account using other houses or other places on the floor within the building. So we actually could, I would feel comfortable that we could have about 100 students on each floor if we really needed to, based on how Washington's set up, the size of their classrooms, and how we have our schedule and our program designed so that we are moving about the building in separate ways, and very rarely do we have crossover. So saying that would be the number we could actually have there. If we got to that point where we're at 400, the ultimate goal would really be then to probably move to a different site. So what we're learning about Washington too is that it's a nice site to be able to train staff and get staff used to the program and how it works. And then once we have enough staff to move on to another site, we can easily do that. Operationally, we're ready to move to another site. It's really about program staff and making sure that we have enough program staff to help support an additional site. From a transportation standpoint, food services, custodial services, and those programs are ready in place to open another site whenever we would like to.
Thank you. That's nice to hear, because one thing I'm hearing just from people I know, like and I've heard other members of the staff speak to this tonight, like sometimes just being in a different environment. Like I know in my house, we keep moving just to different rooms just to have a change of scenery. And there's not really that many of us here, but sometimes it can be really hard to just, when you're doing home and school and work in the same place, it's having that focus even as a middle-aged lady sometimes is a bit of a challenge. My other question is regarding the readiness targets. I know we have the 23, 24 readiness targets. As we're kind of learning more about how COVID works, as we're just, we had that great presentation from Ramsey County. Are we looking in any way at those readiness targets? As we're thinking about this dial back, this what was the other one? I know someone just said it.
Temporary shift.
Temporary shifts. I knew it was TS, and I didn't want to try to guess what that was on the fly. But how do those things fit with our kind of existing readiness targets, or those are completely separate part? How might we understand those working together?
Through the chair. Okay. Through the chair, Director Kopp. They actually are like two sides of the same coin, the same COVID coin. So the first is the readiness targets really were determined and designed to help us figure out when are we ready to re-engage? When are we ready to move forward into the next stage from where we are? So for stage one, when are we ready to engage in stage one? And they're designed based on our values of re-engaging or delivering in-person learning in a safe way for our students and our staff. So to that end, there are a lot of the readiness targets that have to do with facilities. Are our facilities ready? Is the case rate at one, which at that time, the guidance that we had from MDH was 30 and below. What does our community say about engaging or re-engaging and moving forward? And then do we have the staffing available to move forward and to re-engage? So once we're in moving forward, then those readiness targets are really not relevant. They're only relevant for us moving forward because we know that our facilities are ready at that point. We know that our community is somewhat comfortable. We know that we have the staffing that will allow us to make the decision. But once we're in the stage and the situation becomes one where there is community spread or there is a localized concern or there is a widespread concern, then it shifts us to making a decision on if we should dial it completely back at the district level, or if we need to make a decision at this localized spot in this school or in this site or with this program. So they are both very important. But they do serve very different functions and they do work very differently. For instance, in our readiness targets, we had deal breakers. And so at this point, it is really important to say with the dynamic nature of the virus and the changing environment that we're in, we will revisit the readiness target to determine if there's still deal breakers, particularly with the new guidance from MDH that allows us to have a bit more flexibility than we had in the past. We will revisit them and we'll probably come forward with some revisions, not very many because they really are altogether a good picture of if we're ready to go forward. But they really do serve very different purposes, and we do need them both to be able to make informed decisions and to deliver safe instruction in a safe environment for students and staff.
Okay, thank you. That was helpful, and I don't have additional questions at this time. Appreciate the presentation.
Thank you. Director Marchese?
Well, I guess the advantage of being at the end is that you get all your questions asked and answered by everybody else. So I do appreciate my colleagues for having asked most of what was on my mind. I guess maybe one, it's not a concern I'm not sure if it's a concern or a question, but when we think about the academic support centers, and Chief Turner, when you talked about, we had thought 200 would be the max. We're supporting 200 students right now. We could support more. We're not going to necessarily open up more centers. And I'm not sure if you're the right person to sort of give the opinion on this. I'm concerned about sort of the students who we're not hearing from, who could benefit from that work, who we don't know because they're off the grid somewhere. And when I mean off the grid, we don't have the referral to get them into the academic support center. We don't have the counselor who's been able to confirm or not confirm kind of what their participation is. How do we, I guess the bottom line is this right now being utilized to its fullest extent, or should there really be a concrete push to identify additional students for the academic support centers by our staff? And I heard the different prongs of how people are trying to do that in the secondary school level, but to really just sort of, beat the hustings to get students to come and figure out where the students are that we know are struggling, but we can't quite put our finger on it. I'm just worried that it requires more of the student or the student's family to sort of raise their hand than maybe we should be relying on. So I don't know. I'm just tossing this out there.
So through the chair, Director Marchese, I can start and then ask colleagues to help me out. One of the reasons we actually chose, and we're very purposeful in how students are referred to the academic support center, because we wanted that referral to come from a district staff, a teacher, a counselor, a social worker, because they did see some disparities either in their assignments or the fact that they weren't engaging online. They had missed school for the last couple of days. They weren't logging in. They reached out to parent or student and email or phone, and there hasn't been a phone call or email connected. So the fact that we asked for the referrals initially to come from staff, I think, was actually good and strategic, because we are catching those that are probably on the extreme. If we would have allowed families to start, we would have actually had, I think, more of a diverse of families that felt like their student was doing okay, but wasn't doing as good. So really with the staff, they are referring really the highest need. And could we use more? The answer to that question is yes, we can always use more and do more. Although the way that the center is structured, it's also built and structured in a schedule to try and get as many students and support as much as possible. So there's an AM cohort that come in and get that support for a few hours. There's an hour and a half break in between so that cleaning and organization and staff can take a break, a rest. And then there's a PM cohort that come in and get another 3 or 4 hours of that support. And so that happens every day, all day, Monday through Friday. And then there's an AM cohort on Saturday. And so there's enough times in there where we can see quite a few different students. So I think that's been helpful. I'm excited for the work that our secondary admin and their staff are going to be bringing forth. I believe after the first of the year, we're going to see a lot coming from our secondary schools of doing something similar. We're also learning and from the academic support centers that a number of schools want to be able to model some on their own, maybe not to the degree that what we're doing on Rice Street, but what can they do within their one classroom, or what can they do within one small building, one small section of their own school and building. So I think the academic support center has laid some foundation for it, that this can be done. You don't need a whole school program. You can take a few staff that are committed and have the desire and have the time and the will to work with the students. Likewise with the families. You need some committed families that are willing and have, again, to be able to do it. So we're learning how this can happen organically at several different sites. And I believe we're going to see quite a bit more of that over the next several weeks.
That's great. Are there any buildings then that are going to be moving forward then that to do some of these more small scale efforts at the building level?
I'd ask that Director Ginther, if you wouldn't mind sharing some of the initial discussions and work that you're hearing from some of our secondary administrators. Are you still on?
Director Marchese. Yeah, no, I would share that some are in initial stages, just knowing how much. I think to your point, the complexities of this. How do we make it student friendly? What can we do in person potentially? What are those? Because I think what principals are saying too is academic support center is great. Students also want to see familiar faces at times that and that they have relationships with. And so what can we do to really expand that in the near future, in the distant future, knowing that, as the one principal said, and he just adamant, like that 10, 20% of students that they just can't find, if they can find them, they'll hook them because they, and how do we engage those students? So some of the initial conversations are around credit recovery at schools, kind of that, how can we do it in a safe manner where there can be an in-person once a week or every other week, so there's small enough numbers. So the principals are really trying to figure out what's the capacity of their staff to really look to engage in a safe way to hook students, to re-engage and ensure that we can get them to the finish line or get them back on track with where they're at. So I don't think that answered it too concretely, but I think there's some initial stages where that's sort of the general sentiment.
And just a couple other things, Director Marchese. I don't want to forget our partners. Number of our partners are also offering similar programs, not to the scale, of course, but there are community-based programs that are also offering in-person support or distance learning support that we have both on the west side of St. Paul, the east side of St. Paul, that we have. And the last thing is that we're finding out too that having a space that's already designed and supported for social distance, that our staff are meeting their students. So we've seen a number of our teachers that want to do just-in-time assignments or help their students with homework or essay writing or preparing letters for college entry exams or college entrance applications. So they are checking out, if you will, a room. And so that's literally what we call it. You can come in and you can check out a space that is set up already for social distance. Personal equipment, protective personal equipment is already there for you in the room. You can have a mini training on what it means to come into a space, St. Paul Public School space. Now, via COVID, we give you a quick tutorial of 5 minutes. The health department helps with that. And we find a space in the building that a teacher and 7 or 8 of his or her students can go for the day or go for 2 hours. So that has, again, as just in time, an idea that came from the field from one of the staff that said, can we use the academic support center to do this? And the ability to have that adaptiveness and flexibility to just say yes, that's what's been really extremely helpful. So we've seen more of that. That teacher has now told several of their other colleagues. So we have rooms, if you will, booked where teachers and other staff are doing that, as well as social workers who feel that they just need to physically connect with a few students. They've asked to check out spaces and rooms now in the building. So as we continue to see more of this throughout the district, I think others will understand and see that we can continue to provide in-person support in a safe manner, and we can do it well.
Through the chair, I just want to also remind, Jackie knows this better than anybody, but our executive order, the new executive order 9020 or 2094, is specific to supporting our special students with disabilities. And we have seen almost 500 students come through. I think we're down to about 100 left for individual assessments and support at Harding High School with our special education staff. And so we're ensuring that this order doesn't prevent us from providing the types of one-to-one services based on IEPs, minutes, what the needs are, directly to students, specifically our autistic students and our DCD students. And this is one of the best parts about this order, is that it maintains our permission to do that.
That's great. I mean, I'm liking what I'm hearing and the different ways that you're talking about it. I like the thinking about using the academic support centers in creative ways so that teachers can use that as a location and a central space that they can do that. I also like the idea that we're thinking that, you know, we have a lot of space in the district that is available, in that if we can think about, you know, where's the right person, who's the right person, and where's the right location to keep these connections going, that we be, you know, very multidimensional in how we're trying to approach this, so that it's not only you have to go to the academic support center and only there, and only with staff that are there, but that the academic support center can also accommodate other staff and other students, and that the school buildings might be, in a very small scale way, able to handle some of this in a local place that might not necessitate the transportation over to Washington. To do that can be done in the local building with staff that the student knows. And that's actually really critical, because we know that our students are missing the people that they are connected to on a regular basis. And any way that we can kind of foster that is important. So thank you. This has been very helpful. I appreciate this discussion.
Thank you. I've got several follow-up questions to several of my colleagues as well, and I'll just backtrack with Director Marchese and thinking about engagement. One of the questions that I continue to ask, and I think we have to, is how are families being made aware of this resource and being made aware of their ability to tap into it and who to tap into to make that happen for the success of their student.
So, Chair Foster, I can start, and maybe communications, Kevin, Director Burns might want to add. We started out with staff, and we got to over 1,000 referrals just with staff. So that's where we started. The Blitz went out to, again, staff to send out to counselors, to send to students. We created a promotional video this week that was shared with the broader community. We also shared the information with some of our local partners, the city, the community-based agencies, some of our faith agencies or churches and synagogues and mosques, that they are welcome to refer students as well. While bulk of our students are referred by staff, if there's a community member in the community that says Janelle Foster needs help, we are taking those referrals as well. And then lastly, student placement services, because of the just the overwhelming requests, they have now kicked in and are actually taking on the official registration and placement of students into program. So there are some changes that we are making because of the scale and interest in the program. We started out with a grassroots kind of a program, just really wanting to come together and try to offer some support for our students who needed it because of some of the things we were hearing primarily from our families of color. But we are finding that all students and families are actually participating. But however, so now that we've moved beyond informal, and it's now moving in more into a formal program. And so our district supports around our campus team, our student placement have now stepped in to really provide some formal way to register and get the word and message out to our communities. So that's how we are doing it. We also have to be careful too, though, that we have enough staff to be able to support the students who really need the support. So that it's not necessarily helpful to recruit thousands of students who need it, and we don't have the physical people there to be able to offer that. That's something I wouldn't feel good about doing. So we're really trying to balance the referrals with our staffing. We also found out that our students need more one-on-one. So we initially thought of that we were 9 or 10 students for every adult was going to be efficient. We soon learned that we really need to be at we don't have an exact ratio, but our ideal is that we have one adult with every 3 students. And it really kind of depends on the age. The older students, we can do more, but our younger students need almost one-on-one support. And we felt like when they come, let's really use that time wisely and use that time, that valuable time. So we really try to have a really small ratio with our youngest learners.
So, and then I would, thank you. I would ask the same question going back to credit recovery. What is the family outreach? You know, again, this might seem like we're duplicating this, but I'm asking in a different way because the folks still didn't get the answer to that. Thinking about family outreach, a child is struggling. It's the end of the semester. Last week, parents started looking at the grades, found out kids were getting all D's, and we're about to put grades in. Now kids are D's. Where is the outreach, the family connection to say, not before the end of the semester, your kid now has to try to make this up really quick. And I know we're in COVID and everybody's struggling. As a teacher, I'm struggling. As parents are struggling. The kids are struggling. What is the outreach to families? When we talk about even just basic classrooms, but credit recovery, I'm trying to really get it. How are we working and partnering with families during this time? You know, the COVID is burdensome to our entire community. But it is not the response. Our kids have a certain responsibility to be able to track and follow what they're doing. Our parents, or these children, have a certain responsibility. You hear the story that some people are teachers. I didn't go to school to be a teacher, but what we know is our parents in our homes are our child's first and best teachers. You know, so my question is, in that dynamic of how that is happening, how are we really reaching out to families to help them understand where their child is at proactively, so that we don't get to this point? I think about the 400 kids at this point. I'm gonna stop there because I got something to say after that.
To the chair, I think Director Ginther, you wanted to start.
Chair Foster, I would start with, I know our counselors, in working directly with our lead counselors, are doing anything and everything they can to have those personal connections. I know, I know that Executive Director Hans Ott might want to speak a little more to Schoology and how we're accessing technology to be communicating with families in more of that sort of tier 1 or what everyone gets piece. But I really think that, you know, I know our high schools in particular with those credit recovery pieces are doing their best to connect with families. I think that it just needs to be ongoing, and I think we need to find more and more efficient ways and effective ways to be connecting with families, and using technology, I think, is one of those. The other piece is kind of the all hands on deck. I know in talking with multiple high school principals, they're using all their support staff. I know teachers are involved, really doing their best to get to parents to say, here's what your child needs to do, and or here are resources for your child to get to. And everyone's spread thin and everyone's doing their best, but I know that others might have others to share.
Thanks, Director Ginther. To the chair, Chair Foster. You know, there are a couple of different things, and nothing is reaching everyone 100% of the time, and it is a challenge. And I will say that in this pandemic, our gaps for engagement are exacerbated. And we knew how hard it was to get our students to be engaged and fully connected when we were brick and mortar face to face. And so we are faced with new challenges. And talking to teachers and administrators, there are some new ways that we are reaching out. So the way we're using our support staff across the schools has been really creative. Principals and teachers are making sure that there are connections going on with paraprofessionals and other support staff at the school to make sure that families and students are getting contacted regularly. We introduced a new tool with Google Voice, which allows teachers and staff to directly call and be called by families, to text message families, so that we're using multiple different means to try to reach out. Schoology, of course, has opportunities and features, and that takes a shift. Many of our families, some of you on the line might have turned off your notifications because there are so many Schoology updates that come up about grades and things like that. So getting families to know how to use those notifications is a challenge, but also an opportunity for some of the families and teachers connecting. And then, you know, when we get to students who are struggling, and we add in our evening high school pieces and our credit recovery pieces, you know, they're taking time to requiring synchronous sessions with the student, using that time to really connect and ask not just what do you need to learn the material, but what barriers are in your way to help you so we don't have this happen the next quarter. And those things are really valuable. And then we also had conferences that came up. And one principal had mentioned they had almost twice as many families contact and communicated with as we would have in brick and mortar. So the virtual environment actually increased some parent engagement, family engagement during distance learning. So there are some opportunities. In other places, we're still trying to build on what's working first quarter, how can we put our heads together and give time to have principals share so we can even do better second quarter.
And I'm not sure if this is the right space or place, but it really is about college and career readiness and just trying to understand in this COVID era, where are we at with our dual credit and PSEO students? What does that look like in this model right now for those students? And that may be a different conversation. You can say parking lot, we're going to talk about that later, or if there is a quick answer to that.
Director Ginther, before you start, I might ask Seat Member Ali to just share a little bit about what his day is like, and maybe share with us what's working well, what isn't. Khalid, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so Superintendent Gothard, Chair Foster, PSEO is, you know, kind of sometimes it's really, you have to take it like personally because it's, you know, your college career and that you have to make sure that you are on top of your classes because there is no forgiveness in PSEO that, you know, it sticks with you. So that's why most of PSEO students, you know, they understand that. And I'm hopeful that they focus that. But my day usually, you know, I spend all day on screen. I have some classes that are in person, but with rising cases, they might, you know, I think they will go like fully virtual, just hopefully starting next week. But it is kind of hard, but we do get you know, some support with PSEO advising, but I mainly rely on my high school counselors to keep me on track. To basically, I you know, even though I don't have classes in high school, I still attend office hours to talk to, you know, my counselor just to stay on track. But I do get all the support that the district provides through Schoology and all, you know, that are available to everyone within the district. But PSEO, you have to like mainly take it personally, as if you are doing PSEO, that you know, you make sure that you are not falling behind or all that. But it is hard for us too, but we are I am in personally taking advantage of every opportunity that is within the school and also within the institution I attend with.
And how many PSEO classes are you taking right now?
Right now, I have one just ended, so I have about 16 PSEO credit, and I'm taking some two high school classes.
Mr. Ginther, did you want to add some additional supports that we're doing, things that have changed? I mean, PSEO in some ways is similar to distance learning in terms of students aren't on site. Anything to share?
Yeah, Chair Foster and Dr. Gothard, thanks for teeing up Seat Member Ali, only because